Throughout the years, North Korea has gained a reputation as a hermit kingdom due to its isolationist policies and self-centered tendencies. Its nature as a sovereign nation has long depended on its ability to defend itself, and thus the pursuit of the development of a nuclear program was necessary. Despite being one of the most economically underdeveloped and stagnant nations, North Korea stands as one of 9 countries which possess nuclear weapons. This is by design, as North Korea never sought to be an active participant in the world stage, rather a self-reliant country which survives off deception and a strong military presence which threatens the borders of other nations with deadly force. Nuclear weapons grant North Korea disproportionate influence on the global stage, enabling it to leverage its nuclear power for security, political, and humanitarian concessions. This video seeks to analyze the development of the nuclear program in North Korea and the implications upon the global community of which they actively resist engaging with. North Korea's nuclear history. North Korea's ambitions for nuclear weapons emerged in the late 50s when the Kim Il-sung-led regime began training North Korean scientists and engineers with the Soviet Union. This was formalized under a nuclear cooperation agreement with the Soviet Union to acquire help in building its own nuclear program under the guise of peaceful energy development. Cooperation with the Soviet Union advanced significantly when the construction of a 5-megawatt experimental reactor was built in the Yongbyon Nuclear Research Facility in 1986. While this reactor was used to power the surrounding area, it was also designed that could produce weapons-grade plutonium. During this period, the North Korea government signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, agreeing to non-proliferation measures in exchange for nuclear energy technology from the Soviets. However, in violation of the agreement, North Korea continued secretly developing their own nuclear weapons. A nuclear crisis erupted in 1989 when the United States satellite surveillance got footage of the construction of a large nuclear facility that was not under the jurisdiction of the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, an institution tasked with forcing non-proliferation measures. After this discovery, North Korea then agrees to denuclearize with South Korea, only to pull out of the agreement and test their own short-range missile, the Nodong-1. This move solidified North Korea's position of moving forward with their nuclear weapons program, while offering insight into future tactics that may be employed by the North. In a shocking move in 1993, North Korea announced its intentions to withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty, in pursuit of expanding their military program. As a response to this, international powers pressured North Korea's allies to have them submit to an IAEA inspection. In 1994, the agreed framework was signed between North Korea and the 3 countries of South Korea, Japan, and the United States. The agreement effectively froze North Korea's nuclear program by stopping their nuclear reactor activity in exchange for staying in the Non-Proliferation Treaty, subsidizing their energy, humanitarian aid, and assistance in the construction of new nuclear energy plants. The North Koreans had effectively engineered a crisis using the possession of nuclear weapons as a bargaining chip to buy subsidized aid during a time of national famine and economic disaster. It was not long until surveillance footage showing the construction of an underground nuclear facility surfaced in 1998, putting a halt on the subsidized fuel oil and effectively ending the nuclear energy reactor constructions. Yet another crisis emerges in 2002 as the US accuses the North Korean government of sponsoring a secret, highly enriched uranium facility in operation, despite still being part of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. In 2003, North Korea formally withdrew from the Non-Proliferation Treaty and expelled all the IAEA inspectors, announcing that it would continue to strengthen its nuclear capabilities. They restarted their nuclear plants, which had been frozen in the agreements, and began full-scale production of nuclear material. Despite consistent diplomatic efforts over the last 2 decades, no country has been able to disarm the looming threat of North Korea. Instead, the state continues to create nuclear crises to generate aid and economic input into the country. Motivations behind nuclearization. The motivations behind North Korea's nuclear weapons program are deeply rooted in the ideological foundation of the country. Central to this is the Juche idea put forth by Kim Il-sung, which emphasizes absolute self-reliance and independence from foreign influence. The regime believes that to gain absolute independence from foreign countries, securing their sovereignty and bolstering their national security, it must acquire nuclear weapons as a deterrent from outside forces like South Korea or the United States. In this view, nuclear armament is framed not as aggression, but as a protective shield against American imperialism. The perspective has hardened as North Korea has witnessed the collapse of non-nuclear regimes, such as in Libya and Iraq. Paradoxically, North Korea refuses to engage in good faith diplomacy, which has strengthened other countries' national security overall. Despite supposedly peaceful intent, they consistently break agreements and abandon their disarmament talks, opting instead to continue their own weapons tests, intensifying the need for military security in the surrounding area. Ironically, this has only driven the region to become more militarized, prompting the US and its allies to strengthen their own defenses. Instead of a deterrent, they use a nuclear threat as leverage time and time again to extract aid and concessions, providing short-term fixes to their weak economy. The Songun idea put forth by Kim Jong-il provides legitimization to a military society, believing that the army should be the centerpiece to North Korean civilization. Songun is more than just a defense policy, it's a social political policy that defines the military as the leading force of the revolution and the main pillar of the state. The idea justifies the distribution of aid being heavily skewed to helping the military rather than civilians, and the constant expansion of the North Korean military power diverting the aid it gets into nuclear development and armament, leaving the population in poverty. Using Juche and Songun, North Korea governs a state which must be both self-reliant and secure, and that security is guaranteed through military power. Together, the ideologies shape North Korea's internal governance and its belligerent nature in international politics, rendering meaningful diplomacy exceedingly difficult. To North Korea, nuclear weapons are not just tactical assets, they are symbols of national pride, instruments of propaganda, and insurance against regime collapse. Regional implications. As the North's ideological enemy, South Korea deals with a constant threat of militaristic action, including nuclear strikes. The aggression shown by the North necessitates a state of military readiness, which is one of the reasons that South Korea has such a large military force, ranking second only to North Korea's first in total military personnel. Though technologically superior, South Korea must account for the North's massive manpower, artillery, and now nuclear capabilities. Originally, South Korea's goal was to eventually unify the two Koreas under a democratic system. After decades of hostility, failed diplomacy, and military standoffs, this goal seemed unattainable. A new approach to dealing with the North was enabled through the introduction of the Sunshine Policy in 1998 by President Kim Dae-jung, which was an attempt to make peace and disarm through kindness and mutual cooperation, rather than through demands of aggression. The South still bolstered its own military presence, but offered aid unconditionally to the North to try and soften their nationalist and isolationist policies. While the Sunshine Policy temporarily eased tensions and facilitated historic meetings between the North and South, it ultimately failed to curb the North's nuclear program. The tactic was criticized, arguing that it amounted to appeasement with little to show for in terms of disarmament or behavioral change. Much of the aid given was diverted directly to the North Korean military program, rather than civilian affairs, raising questions of the feasibility of engagement without reinforcement mechanisms. The policy was formally abandoned in the mid-2000s as nuclear tests and missile launches continued, but the concept of dialogue over confrontation continues to shape elements of South Korea's strategy. China remains a key regional player, serving as North Korea's main economic trading partner. During the nuclear crisis, it has remained passive, outwardly declaring that North Korea should not engage in nuclear proliferation, while avoiding economic sanctions that would surely force the regime's hand. This is likely due to China's need for the regime to stay in power, as it would cause a refugee crisis on the border and subvert China's power over the region. China's passiveness through the North's nuclear tests has frustrated South Korea and the United States. While occasionally supporting UN sanctions, trade often continues between the two states, reflecting China's strategy in maintaining regional stability. allowing North Korea to exploit their geopolitical status. Global security and non-proliferation. North Korea's defiance of the international norm of non-proliferation undermines the global importance of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, weakening the significance of the treaty which limits the spread of nuclear weapons. North Korea's success in development of nuclear weapons may trigger an emboldening of other countries to follow similar paths. Furthermore, North Korea has pursued aggressive militaristic actions towards its neighbors through missile tests throughout the Kim dynasty's reign. More recently, it has tested the capabilities of its Hwasong and Hwasong-18 intercontinental ballistic missiles, which can deliver a nuclear warhead across the Pacific Ocean. Despite heavy economic sanctions imposed by other countries, North Korea remains the only country which actively develops and tests their own nuclear arsenal. Its last known nuclear test, conducted in 2017, occurred decades after most nuclear powers stopped their nuclear testing. The continued defiance of international norms reinforces North Korea's role as a destabilizing force in the global community. North Korea also engages in the selling of their missile technologies to countries such as Pakistan and Iran. To increase economic input, North Korea has clearly set out its intentions of selling their missile and nuclear technology. North Korea has also been linked to proliferation in Middle Eastern countries such as Syria and Iran, threatening the current global security by cause of increased instability. Conclusion. North Korea's path towards nuclearization is a result of decades of planning, policy rooted in ideological conviction, strategic calculation, and international manipulation. From its early cooperation with the Soviet Union to its eventual withdrawal from the NPT, North Korea has used the threat of nuclear weapons as a deterrent and a bargaining chip to secure economic aid and political concessions. The behavior itself is rooted in the political ideologies of Juche and Sung, which prioritize self-reliance and military strength as necessary for state survival and legitimacy as a country. The implications of the nuclearization of North Korea extends far beyond the Korean peninsula. In the region, it has created harsh military tensions with South Korea and Japan, as well as complicating relationships with their ally in China. On an international scale, the defiance of North Korea undermines the importance of non-proliferation norms, increasing the risk of nuclear proliferation in other unstable countries. Despite decades of diplomatic engagement and economic sanctions, North Korea has not only kept their nuclear status, but continues to expand it. Its strategy of engineering crises to extract concessions has proven effective, placing the global community in a constant state of response. As long as the regime perceives nuclear weapons as essential to its survival, meaningful disarmament remains unlikely. Ultimately, North Korea's nuclear program poses one of the most persistent challenges to global peace and security. Addressing the concern will require long-term coordinated efforts that go beyond sanctions and concessions. The strategy must come to terms with the nature of the North Korean state and must grapple with the country's deterministic ideology for changes to be made. Thank you.